Coming up today on Fighting Fraud with AARP Connecticut. Renovation gone wrong.
Everything had to be redone. $26,000.
How the Connecticut Associate Attorney General ended up helping her own family member who was targeted by a home improvement scam. And what to look for in your contracts before you build. Then, how do home improvement scammers go after their victims? We show you the warning signs. Plus, are you paying too much for utilities?
I'm very intelligent, but I'm very busy, and it can happen to anyone.
Marilyn explains what a teaser rate is and how they're used in the industry. And language matters. The do's and don'ts of what to say if someone you know has been targeted by a scammer or signed a contract that is more than meets the eye.
Welcome to Fighting Fraud with AARP Connecticut. Today we're going to talk about so much, from home improvement scams to teaser rates, and even some scams involving any kind of contract or consumer agreements. So let's start there. Now, do you read the fine print on the contracts? Let us know in the comments below. Here is something you might not know. Many consumer agreements or contracts include a no guarantee suitability clause in which the company admits that its product or service may not work as advertised. This can include anything from software to cell phones to contracts for services in your home. Wow, do you believe it? Now, first up is a cautionary tale from our own Associate Attorney General, who deals with many types of scams every day.
So my daughter had entered into a home improvement contract to add an addition to a new home. And unfortunately, that home improvement contract was not in compliance with the Connecticut statutes. And she later learned that when he failed to complete the work as promised. He did bare bones. She sent him I told her, and she goes, "Mom, what do I do now? Mom, what do I do?" And I go, "What do you mean? What do you do?" "Mom, he hasn't come. It's been a month now. He said he was going to complete. We gave him this money." I go, "How much money did you give him?" 13. I was like, "And how much was the contract?" 16. And I'm like, all I could go is like this. I kept on, I was like, no. So it turns out that once this happens, okay, you need to get another contractor to see what your damages are, right? And to see what you need to do. So in her case, everything had to be redone. He had the rafters up, he did the siding, but if at any time the rafters, all that wood, all that could have come down on them. $26,000 to repair, to take everything down, because what the guy did was very dangerous. Was she scammed? I would say, yes, she was scammed. And I think a lot of people, especially now that it's getting summer, spring, some people are going to want their roofs done or the chimney done. All of those people need to be registered and have a license with the Department of Consumer Protection. You should always check. You can call them, and I have a number actually in here. It's 860-713-6110. You should call and ask, "Hey, is this person registered?" You could also, the other most important thing that you should do is go to the Connecticut Judiciary website and put in the name. Go to Civil Lookup and put their name in there to see if there are any lawsuits against the person or the company. And you see if there are lawsuits and a whole bunch of lawsuits, even one or two, you should consider. It can happen to anyone. That's the most important thing you need to know. It can happen to anyone. It doesn't matter your background.
Wow, it really can happen to anyone. I mean, her daughter has heard about these cases for years, and the contractor still targeted her. It's just so sad. But renovations aren't the only kind of home improvement scams.
A home improvement scam could be a variety of different types of frauds. It could deal with anything from a person that's unlicensed or not approved to do particular work, to overcharging, or to under providing, or even falsifying what they've provided or the work that they've done. So there's a lot of different frauds that fall within that scheme, from home improvement to contracting work. So it definitely encompasses a wide range of frauds, and depending on what type of fraud, there are various warning signals for each.
The good news is that you're not completely helpless when it comes to scams surrounding your home and most agreements or contracts.
Here are some red flags of home improvement scams that you should be aware of.
One tactic that criminals can use, especially door to door, is to tell you to act now. They put you under this pressure that you won't get as great of a deal if you don't sign on the dotted line this moment.
In the state of Connecticut, there should be a waiting period, a review period for the contract. You should be given a written contract of the work that's going to be done. And there should be a 3-day waiting period before any work is done. So you can review that contract if you want to get a second opinion. So if they're pushing you to do this work, or they're not willing to give you a contract, or not willing to wait those 3 days, that should whistles should be going off right now, saying that this is probably a scam, and they're violating what the procedure is.
You know what? That was great information. A little later on, we're going to share tips on what to look for before you sign a contract. But first, have you ever heard of a teaser rate? Marilyn talks about how it cost her and her mother a lot of money.
Well, I want to share with you a story about what happened to me and when I was shopping for my utilities. I got this beautiful little card in the mail that said, you can pay a lower rate if you sign up with us. I was ecstatic. I said, oh, great. Look, this is so much less than the standard rate. Let me do this. And boy, was I proud, because not only did I save money, the good daughter that I am, I went and did the same thing for my mom. I signed her up. Yay! She was so happy. She called me the very next month and said, oh, Marilyn, thank you so much. I saved so much money. Well, down the road, 2 years, a year and a half later, I went to a class that AARP offered on comparing your utility rates. And lo and behold, I was paying over $120 a year more than I should have been, because I didn't know any better. I didn't know that what I was being offered was a teaser rate. And you know what? Now I'm paying more than I should have. And the guilt that set in, because my mother, who had just been so happy with me, was doing the same thing. My mom is on a fixed income. Maybe I didn't notice it, but for her, that money meant a lot, a lot. And I didn't know about teaser rates. No one told me. It just automatically renewed, except I didn't know that it renewed at a much higher rate. But you know what? It can happen to anyone. It happened to me. Why? Because I wasn't paying attention. Yes, that's true. But also because I'm busy. I am busy. And I didn't take the time to check my bill every month, and not necessarily every month, maybe every 6 months, every quarter. I wasn't doing that. And I didn't, because I'm busy. And I thought I had the best deal ever. So part of the reason that I'm speaking out about this is because I want other people to be aware and take their time. Stop, look, and listen. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And, I'm very proud of the fact that AARP works with the regulatory authority, and I've had the opportunity to testify before the legislative office building before legislators who they themselves, believe it or not, have said to me too, I was a victim too. So we shared in that little scenario.
I'm so glad that Marilyn knows it wasn't her fault and that she was targeted by this scam. So where do you turn if you're a scam victim? Jessica will tell us about how people are finding the support they need from AARP.
One of our newest programs that AARP Fraud Watch Network has is a free fraud support group that meets virtually. We call it REST, Resilience, Strength, Time. In a partnership with Volunteers of America, we've created a curriculum to help victims of fraud as well as loved ones and caregivers who are trying to assist these victims. We talk more about self-care. We have an opportunity for deep breathing and coming into tune with our bodies. We have a time for everyone to share and open up to discussion and peer support amongst each other. And then we end with some affirmations and some closing to help us feel stronger and more empowered to stand up against these scammers.
Unfortunately, some folks just aren't ready to talk to strangers about their situations. Coming up in a few minutes, Jessica will be back to tell us what not to say to someone who has been targeted. But now it's going to be time to go over those red flags for the contracts that we promised you.
The license number, the starting and ending date, it needs to have a 3-day cancellation notice. If it doesn't have those things, it could be a criminal violation. So that the police get involved. So you file a complaint, the guy or person, guy, woman, or whoever can get arrested, and they can go to jail. So it's not just a civil, it's not just a Connecticut unfair trade practice violation, it also can be criminal. So if you are scammed, in a sense that if the work was not completed or the person took the money and ran, it's not, you haven't lost everything. Okay, there is a guarantee fund that the state has, that if the contractor is registered and licensed, you can tap into this guarantee fund. In Connecticut, it's $15,000. So the way you do that is, if the company or the person filed for bankruptcy, you get that bankruptcy notice, and then you can file for the guarantee fund. If you sue and you get a judgment against them or her, the person or the contractor, you can also take that judgment and file an application for the guarantee fund. So that's the way it works. It's either bankruptcy, judgment, and most of the times, all you need to do is just have a copy of that document and file with the state for the guarantee fund.
Well, I'm learning so much today. This is great. But contracts in general can be overwhelming for all of us. So here are some things to watch for in everyday consumer contracts. According to the Connecticut Department of Consumer Protection, you should remember, don't be rushed. Sign only when you are ready and don't feel pressured. Shop around. And thirdly, ask questions. Yes, ask questions. You can even seek legal advice if you aren't sure of something. Now, I want you to keep these in mind the next time you're handed a contract to sign. Before we go, we want to show you the right and wrong way to speak to someone who's been targeted by a scam.
AARP is working to try to help us all change the narrative and the language that we use. So I'm going to give some examples now of what not to say and how we can say things better when we're talking about fraud victims. Instead of saying, "Why are you talking to these people?" you can say, "What information did they ask you?" or "Why did they call you?" Instead of saying, "I can't believe you fell for it," you can say, "This is not your fault." Instead of saying, "Scammers are clever," we can say, "Criminals are deceitful." Instead of saying, "You were duped or swindled," we can say that you were deceived or coerced or manipulated. Instead of saying that someone fell for a scam, we want to try to say that they were victimized by a scam. And instead of saying, get smarter about scams, we like to say, learn the red flags of scams.
What a great episode today. Now, what was your favorite moment? I think my favorite moment was when Jessica actually talked about and told us how not to speak to a victim of fraud. Remember, if you heard of any kind of scam in your area, or if you've been targeted, call the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline at 877-908-3360. Recuerden, si usted ha sido víctima de algún tipo de fraude, llame al número 877-908-3360. Don't forget that you're not alone and that there is help out there. Now, thank you so much for joining us today on Fighting Fraud with AARP Connecticut. Make sure to like and subscribe and check back for new episodes. Thank you.
Join us for events in your community. Go to aarp.org/CT events. Look for the Con Artist Playbook by AARP Connecticut.